joining this morning. This is, we hope, will be a very helpful session. We also hope that this session will stir a lot of other questions that you can come to us with or other people that you're meeting throughout the week. My name is Tom Hume, and I am a founder of an organization called the CureJM Foundation. And in my other life, my work life, so to speak, I was a marketing person, doing marketing for tech companies, software companies, silicon chip companies, computer companies. Way back in the day, I did all the advertising for Gateway Computers, cow-spotted boxes. This will age you if you know what I'm talking about. And Toshiba and other companies like that. About 21 years ago, my son, middle son, his name's Parker, he was 4 years old, and he slowly, his body, well, he just started losing strength very slowly, and to the point where he couldn't take a few steps without collapsing, he couldn't lift his head off a pillow, and like many of you, after trying to figure it out, after going to many, many doctors, we did finally figure it out. He had a juvenile dermatomyositis, which is an autoimmune. It's basically the inflammation function of the body does not stop. It starts attacking muscles and organs and other things. So after that first year of just being panicked, not knowing what to do, getting on the internet, as somebody said yesterday, Dr. Google, seeing horrible possible outcomes, we got through that phase, and my wife and I decided, we have to do something. If not, who's going to do it if not us? And so we started something called the CureJM Foundation. Fast forward, we're in our 20th year. We had our 20th anniversary. We've raised almost $20 million for research for a rare disease. And when I say rare, because I know there's many ultra rare folks in the group here. So we're 2 to 3 children in a million, and it's a childhood disease. So 20 million is a great amount. We've done mouse models. We've done all the nice research steps you want to be doing. And because it's autoimmune, the genetic piece is a little trickier because usually with autoimmune, there's a predisposition in the body, and then something outside kind of triggers it. So. Anyway, so that's my background and with CureJM, and I'm going to let Jennifer tell us about what she does, and then we'll go into a little interactive questions for all of you, and then Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Jennifer Sills. I'm from San Francisco, California, and I also am a founder, and my previous background is I was a estate planning and tax attorney, so you'll hear me talk a lot about succession planning in a foundation. My daughter Juliet is 14, and when she was 7, it took us 7 years to land on a diagnosis. She was diagnosed with an ultra-rare genetic condition called Oker-Chung neurodevelopmental syndrome. And at the time, she was the 6th in the world to be diagnosed with it. And when our neurologist gave us the results, I said, "What's next? What do we do now?" And she said, "Well, there's an author on this paper that you can contact, and contact her and ask her what to do next." And so that's what I did. I didn't even know who I was contacting, and many of you may know her in the room. Her name is Dr. Wendy Chung, and she's considered the house of rare disease. And I called her and I asked her, "So what's next? What are we doing?" And she said, "Well, we're doing nothing. No one is studying this syndrome, and no one will unless you start an organization. You fundraise like crazy. You fund basic research. You find families around the world, have an in-person conference, make reagents." I'm like, "What are reagents?" I think I was 39 at the time, and I was sort of going through my own midlife crisis early. And I said, I can do this. I can't do the science, but I can bring people together. And so I knew, too, that I always say at the time, I remember when I got the publication, and I went to Berkeley. I thought I was smart, and I'm not, because I had to look up every other word on this paper. And I knew that we had to do better, and I also knew that we were living in a time where science was catching up, and conditions that thought were untreatable were now being treated, and I wanted to be part of that revolution. So We started our organization. We're now in our 5th year. And we just hired our first full-time employee, who's a science director, which was an amazing accomplishment because I never thought that we would get there, particularly because I was like, maybe many of you in this room, after we were diagnosed, we came to Global Genes, and I met Vanessa, who's in the back of the room, who became my mentor. I just never imagined. I thought we would find one cure, one treatment, and I would be shutting down our doors, right? Like just leaving this behind. And I've slowly realized that this organization and all of our organizations are actually going to be here forever. And so I think that's why one of the reasons why I'm really interested, and I was excited to come today to talk about long-term growth, because if we can't cure malaria with a $4 pill, we're never going to be able to cure all of our rare diseases. There's issues with access. Even if we come up with a cure, not everyone, unfortunately, will be able to get it. And this is just a hard, cold reality. And so we need to make sure that we make organizations that provide support so people know what to do next, and then what their options are. So
great.
That's me.
Great. And Rob?
So I am currently the executive director of Uplifting Athletes. I joined Uplifting Athletes back in 2016, and kind of my journey is a little bit unique in that I was playing football at Syracuse University. I was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of brain cancer, and in 2012, my Syracuse teammates started the Syracuse chapter of Uplifting Athletes in my honor. For me, it was an unbelievable opportunity to take everything that I had experienced, the trauma, the heartbreak, the diagnosis, and to be able to make something better out of it, talk to the community, and to really be able to take this and help bring positivity to something that had been pretty devastating. And so from 2012 to 2016, I would go back to Syracuse a couple times a year, and I'd talk to the team, and I'd go and do community events, and we'd fundraise and support Uplifting Athletes. And in 2016, I reached out to the founder of Uplifting Athletes, and I said, is there an opportunity for me to join the organization full time? And in 2016, Uplifting Athletes was an organization that had 2 full-time employees, one being the executive director and then a staff member, and was very grassroots. It was basically a mom and pop operation that was working out of the basement, working to network with college football programs across the country and to hold fundraising events. And our founder at the time said, you know, he had just started a for-profit venture that had kind of been born out of the work that he had been doing. And he said, I need somebody to kind of step into the leadership role. So started at the organization in 2016, and for about 2 years, I was just there to learn. He still maintained the executive director title, and I was there to understand everything that I possibly could about the needs of the rare disease community and how we could use the platform that we have and make the world better for people impacted by a rare diagnosis. In 2018, I was promoted to the executive director role. 6 months later, we hired Brett Brackett joined our team, and he became our general manager, our chief operating officer. And it was just the 2 of us, and we had to figure out how we were going to take this small organization with a fantastic mission and grow it. We believed that we had an opportunity to really revolutionize the rare disease community in a way that we were uniquely positioned to do, because we had this connection to a community outside of rare disease. And so we say we live at the intersection of sports and rare disease, and we have an opportunity to bring in athletes both at the college and professional level, allow them to use the platform that they have, and bring more awareness, funding, and support to the rare disease community. I ultimately believe that if we want to accomplish all the things that we want to achieve as a rare disease community, we need more than just the support of the people that are here in this room. We need the groundswell of support of the general public, and I think that is something that we as an organization take very, very seriously. It's an amazing and awesome responsibility that we have. And so we started in 2018 and really tried to build off of what had been established. The organization had been founded in 2007 and had kind of slowly and meticulously just kind of grown and add chapters and just had these grassroots fundraising events and supported research. but we really wanted to take this concept, and I believed, and Brett believed, that we had the opportunity to take this and become a national nonprofit with an unbelievable ability to influence change and drive research and reimagine the way that we were funding research in the rare disease community. And so fast forward to today, we are a team of 9. Our revenue has grown almost 4x in the last 5.5 years. And now it's kind of, we're at a new inflection point of how do we take the progress and the growth that we've had, and how do we continue to scale that and continue to grow and continue to have a benefit to the rare disease community at large, and be able to support the areas that are unmet in the rare disease community as a whole. And we have a number of different programs. I'll shamelessly plug that we have a table outside if you want to learn more. Yeah, the whole opportunity of having the privilege to work in the rare disease community, to be the executive director, and to be somebody that, for me as an organization, it's something that is deeply personal. I have lived the rare journey. I still live the rare journey, but I'm also an athlete, and I'm also somebody that can really empathize with really every aspect of what we do as an organization. And I feel very fortunate to be in the position that I am, and to be able to be a part of this amazing organization and unbelievable community of people. And we as an organization just want to continue to find the opportunities to support, grow, and develop, and become a catalyst for collaboration in the community, and help uplift and embrace all of those impacted by a rare diagnosis.
That's great. That's great. This is a good comparison, because we have a cross-disease organization. Yeah. We're very disease-specific, too. I'm going to do a quick, this is the interactive part. So I'm going to read to the room. So how many, is this your very first RARE Summit that you've attended? Please raise your hand. Wow. Okay, that's impressive.
Welcome.
Yeah.
And then let's do the similar. Raise your hand if you're a founder, a leader, or on the board of a 501c3 currently. Okay. And then maybe keep your hands up. Is your organization at least 2 years old? Raise your hand. Okay, keep them up. How about your organization at least 5 years old? Wow. Is your organization at least 10 years old? Nice. Is your more than 15-year-old? Okay, so this is kind of others. Look around the room, because these are the ones who've made it further than most nonprofits make it. So that's impressive. Okay, a couple more questions. Raise your hands. Do you have a paid staff? Okay. Do you have, raise your hand, if you have boards with less than 50% of the board seats are held by families directly impacted by the rare disease? Oh, okay, that's good, because that gets to be a milestone point. Raise your hand if you're actively doing research today. Good, all right. Raise your hand if you have a very active medical advisory board. Great. And then also if you have a chief science officer on staff. Raise your hand a little higher on that if you've made that leap. Okay. And then that was interesting that, your organization, that was the first hire. That's pretty amazing. Usually it's an executive director, but you went right to the science, which is really good.
I work for free.
Okay, well that's it then. I'll start with Rob on this and come back to Jennifer. But so establishing a board there's many things that go into it, right? And I mentioned before, a lot of our boards tend to be families directly touched by the disease. There's boards where you're just bringing in big money people, or your boards that you are bringing in just really active volunteers who work their way up. So what has been your experience in board planning, making decisions around the right board members?
So I think what's been fascinating for me is I came into the organization of Uplifting Athletes, and I mentioned before, it was very grassroots. It was kind of just bootstraps, we're going to make this work. And so our board, when I joined the organization in 2016 and even transitioned to the executive director role in 2018, it was the friends and family and network of the founder. They were all tied to him as the individual, not necessarily the cause. We had people on the board that had a connection to the cause, But by and large, they were there because they had a good connection or friendship with the founder. And they basically were a great board for the organization as it was structured. And when we came in and we had this vision of saying, hey, we want to take this to another level, we look at the board and we say, is this the board that can help us get to where we're going? They could be a great board for the first 3, 4, 5 years of the organization, but as we look forward to the next 5, 10, 15 years, where do we want to go? And so a big portion of my experience in the executive director role was really learning how that transition was going to take place. And technically, as the executive director, it is not my responsibility to establish who is on the board. It is the responsibility of the board chair. As many of you guys may know or have experienced, gotta nudge some people sometimes. So really it's the communication and working with the board chair and being able to say, hey, this is the vision that we have for this organization, the direction and the trajectory that we want to go down, and now we need to build a board that's gonna help us get there. There's only so much that a staff, regardless of size, is going to be able to accomplish on their own. The board is such an important component of the long-term growth of a nonprofit organization. These are the individuals that are going to be there not only to financially support, but to open open doors for you, the connections to their network, provide you the opportunities to make introduction so that you can do what you do well, sell the organization, bring people into the community and say, hey, this is how we need help. And so what's been really fascinating, and this is a very ongoing process for us at Uplifting Athletes, that we've been working to develop. We didn't have things as foundational as term limits and terms and structures of saying, hey, every 3 years we're going to vote to say, do we want this board member to come back and be a part of that? And I want to be clear in that this is something that goes both ways. When you don't establish an end date for a board member, it is not only that they end up being there maybe longer than you want them there, they might be there longer than they want to be there. And so it goes both ways, that you have to give people an opportunity to move on and to phase out, or even take some time off and come back. And I think it's really important that you provide that opportunity for people to be a part of the organization, to engage, to learn, to add value, but then also to step back and allow the growth. And Jennifer so eloquently talks about transitioning not only the board, but the founder role, executive director role. And it's really important that there is that understanding that this really goes both ways for the board members, and that they have an amount of time that they can really give to a board. We had board members that had been a part of our board for over a decade. And at some point, it just becomes, it's there, it's a nice thing, I've been a part of it, and it's just kind of something that you do. And what we've learned in going through this process of trying to introduce new board members is that you're gonna find people that are reinvigorated, that are excited about the opportunity. We as an organization have grown tremendously. We're starting to do cool new things, and there's people that we want to bring into the board that are going to help us take those next steps. And as we've been developing the next evolution of our board, for us, the two things that we've really been looking for in the phase that we're in is influence and affluence. Is there ways that you can open doors for us or help financially support the trajectory and the growth of the organization? I believe that in a board, as you grow, they should be a financial contributor. It doesn't have to be $50,000 per board member. It can be $5, it can be $1, but having them have that financial investment is so important. And being able to count on that as a source of reoccurring revenue, and something that, hey, this is what you're giving to, and this is where we're going, and this is what we're going to do with that support. So the transition, it's a delicate transition, and I think the big piece for us was having a new interim board chair come in and say, hey, this isn't to make anybody have hurt feelings or to kick anybody out, but we're just going to give people the opportunity to move on if they want to, or to stay if they want to, and be able to give that opportunity on both sides. That, hey, you were a great board member for us from our infancy until we were in our 5th year, but now we need somebody that's going to help us take us to the next level. And that's where we start to transition into the different qualities that we look for in a board member and how they can really help develop the organization moving forward.
And Jennifer, your thoughts on building boards?
Yeah, so when I was first looking at starting the foundation and I came to Global Genes, I had not yet kind of thought about building a board. And I met Vanessa, again, like I said, who's in the back of the room. And she kind of gave me this idea after speaking with her that I needed to also speak with other organizations to see how they did it. And so in the first 18 months before I launched the foundation, I probably spoke to 30 to 35 organizations, big to small, you know, old to new, to see kind of how they were doing things. And from the conversation with her and then sort of from the due diligence, I found that you just didn't want to fill the board with warm bodies, right? That you, and you feel, by the way, there's a sense of urgency, right, when you're starting an organization. There's so much to do. There's so much you want to accomplish. Parents, you're finally, for us, right, we were only the 6th in the world, and we were finally finding parents. And Vanessa had warned me that what they had seen in one of the organizations that she had worked with, that they were filling it potentially with parents and grandparents, but they weren't necessarily strategic in how they were filling the board seats. And she challenged me to think about it in a way that I sort of look at. I also invest in early stage companies. So really what they do as well is they look at who could be their advisors to move the needle for them. And so in the first 5 years, we were kind of looking at what did we want to accomplish and who could help us accomplish those goals. And so we set out a dream board list. So it was, I can't remember what all the titles were, but one was an accountant and a lawyer, someone who had VC healthcare or biotech experience, PR and marketing. So kind of all these different categories that we could have them, one, be our experts that we'd go to. So they were almost an advisory board in many ways as well, particularly for the first 5 years, but then also could dig deep in their Rolodexes. That's an old term, right? Old Rolodexes. So I feel like my grandpa up here. And to really help, again, move the needle forward. And that were professionals in their area who could give like really hard, good feedback and how to reach our goals. And so we ended up not filling our board with parents. We went out and they were, of course, friends of friends or friends of family and things like that for people who could really kind of help us fill those roles. And for us, it's been incredibly successful, I would say. In our 5th year, I think we've raised $2.4 million as a small rare disease organization. We've found, at least registered with our foundation, we have almost 200 patients worldwide. We have 8 institutions worldwide working on research for us. And then we were able to hire our first employee. I would say, though our board couldn't be successful without the auxiliary boards that we have. And so we also have a parent advisory board, and then we also have our scientific board, which I think most people have. But our parent advisory board is unique in the sense that they're really helping to drive the board's agenda. And when I say that is that the kind of board is boring. The board is all operational, right? It's like, what are our goals? What's the finances? You know, how are we going to fundraise? The exciting part comes from the parent advisory board, where they're really giving day-to-day feedback, really kind of driving our research agenda, making sure that when we're voting on the budget and things like that, that our board is informed. And I think without our parent advisory board, our board also couldn't be successful. And so for us, we have a parent advisory board. We now meet every other month in which we have 20 to 30-minute presentations where we're educating them on different initiatives or reasons why natural history studies are important, so they then can be a mouthpiece for the foundation for the entire community or for their communities to educate them as well. So we've really found this kind of sort of nice partnership. I think maybe everyone knows everyone needs a scientific advisory board. However, much to my dismay, I really thought that they were going to be driving the agenda, kind of telling us, this is where you should go next. This is, you know, almost building a research roadmap. They are amazing. We're so grateful for their help. But the response I was normally getting when I was presenting a grant was, well, do you have the money to fund it? And I said, well, yeah, we have the money to fund it, but I need to know is this going to move the needle? Does this get us closer to clinical trial? Does this get us closer to treating patients? And so that is one of the things, is I think when I started off that I was a little naive about, is that I didn't realize the role that, I thought the role of the scientific advisory board, they were going to play a much larger role in developing our strategy.
Excellent. I'll just add on to a couple things. So regarding boards, absolutely on term limits, because it actually forces you to think about successions, right? To bring up new blood. And we did that as an exercise. We changed our bylaws about, I think, like 6 years ago from the original bylaws, and it's like, wow, you improve, right? You realize your organization is different, your goals are different, and you make a better set of bylaws. Getting diversity on the board, well, diversity, pure diversity, but also skill diversity too. So I'm very happy we've started to reach that. We've got financial experts, we've got attorneys, we've got, so that's just, even though they're all still families, you know, who have kids with JM, at least we're getting the skill set diversities there. I wish we had more diversity, just broad diversity on culture and ethnicity and everything else. And that's actually one of our goals. You had talked about ancillary groups too. We've actually done something. We have a very strong grandparent organization, and that there's an ancillary group, because grandparents are just the best resource at all, completely, for these kids with JM. And so the head of the grandparent organization actually is a board seat. It's a shorter term board seat, but built that in. We also, the person who's part of our National Leadership Council, which our Leadership Council is all these different like cities with sort of chapters, basically. And the head of that is also a board member. And then what I'm very proud of is this year we established kind of a teen and young adult group, because there's a lot of sessions here about transition from pediatric to adults. And so the person who's heading that group is also a short-term board seat too. So we're getting that representation, which I found helps. Okay, I want to make sure we get to your questions. I'm going to throw one last question to you guys. Just try and be quick, and we can come back around to it. I'll start with you, Jennifer. What are the one or two decisions that had the biggest impact of growth on your organization since you started? Just like what decision, like what crossroads decision, like really made the difference and sent you up?
I mean, I just think in general, just taking risks. I think, I mean, in all honesty, I think the reason why we've been so successful and now in our 5th year, we can actually stop and take some time, is that we never stopped to put a bow on anything. To be honest, I mean, I'm just going to be clear, our back end in many ways was messy. Because if you wanted to move fast and you wanted to move forward, you didn't have time to, you know, put everything in a file and make sure that it was, I mean, because you just don't have enough money and you don't have enough volunteers. And so I think not being afraid to move forward, even though everything is maybe not, you know, you don't have tons of standard operating procedures, and maybe your CRM is Excel. That's okay, you know. So I think for us is just knowing, just putting one foot in front of the other, and most of the time we weren't ready to launch, but we did, and we made changes along the way. And I think another thing, the reason why we've been so successful is we're not afraid of change, right? I love AI, I love experimenting, I love cutting edge things, work smarter, not harder. And so I think that's the other thing, is that I want to kick myself out of the organization. Okay, this is my end goal. My end goal is not to stay here forever, because like I said to you before, I know now that this organization is going to be here for a very long time, because everyone's always going to need support. So that's what I'm always working towards, is that I am not afraid to leave. I'm just figuring out how to do that. And so I always welcome suggestions, comments, changes. Let's make this better at any time. I'm not married to any of the decisions we've made. That's excellent. And Rob, one or two decisions that just changed the trajectory of your organization?
I think for us, I love what Jennifer said. You have to take risks. There was things that we did. Some of you may be familiar. We launched a program called the Young Investigator Draft. It's modeled after the NFL draft, but instead of drafting athletes, we draft researchers and give them a grant. When we did that program in 2018, we were far from ready to do it. We actually didn't know what we were doing. I was calling patient advocacy organizations and saying, hey, can I give somebody in your research community $10,000? And I got a lot of people going, what are you talking about? It is taking those chances, it's taking those risks. For us, one of the most important things was the diversity of revenue. We had to diversify revenue streams. When we moved into the leadership of the organization, we had a single revenue stream. It was the fundraising events that happened at the college campuses across the country. They were great. We loved them. They were fantastic. We still do them today, but they're not a means to scale and grow an organization. We had to have something that we took ownership of. We didn't own those fundraising events. They were the Syracuse Lift for Life, the Penn State Lift for Life, the Notre Dame Lift for Life. I couldn't go to a pharma or biotech company and say, hey, will you sponsor this event? Because we didn't own the intellectual property. And so when we developed the Young Investigator Draft, we did it with a lot of intention in that this was the first thing that we owned. And so when we developed it, we wanted to make sure that it was something that was sponsorable and something that we could go to the life sciences, the pharma and the biotechs and the service industry and say, hey, this is something that is incredibly unique, it's exciting, it's gonna be, I believe, transformative to how we fund and approach rare disease research and giving these seed grants. Will you support that? And that was immediately a second revenue stream for us. And then what it did was allow people to come into the organization, see what we do, see a new thing that was unique in the space, and then they go, well, what else do you do? And so then it's like, all right, well, these are the other things that we can do. These are the other ways that we can grow and develop. So being able to take a single revenue stream that these grassroots fundraising, get sponsorship, find grants, be able to tap into different revenue streams. I was just talking to Tom and Jennifer about, is there opportunities for government funding? Getting the board involved, getting donations from them, setting up a donor giving program, all of these things that help build sustainability. If you guys remember, there was a thing that happened in 2020 called the pandemic. All of our fundraising events were canceled. All the money that we had relied on year in and year out evaporated in a matter of weeks. And the way that we were able to sustain ourselves is because we had, fortunately, in the years prior, built relationships with pharma and biotech companies that said, hey, we understand what you're going through. Here's some support for grants to get through the pandemic and be able to come out on the other side, hopefully better, stronger, and be able to move forward with the program that you've been working to develop. And those are the things that have really allowed us to sit here today and be like, well, how did you go from 2 employees to 9? It was the ability to diversify the revenue streams and be able to say that if one drops, there's another one that could increase. And the more that you're able to diversify those revenue streams, the less, or I guess the more risk averse you become as an organization, be able to become more sustainable and tolerable of influxes in economic shifts or anything, pandemics that hopefully don't happen again. But those are the kind of things that have helped us sustain ourselves.
That's great. All right, I'm going to open up questions because, we got a microphone there too. A question up front here. We'll bring the mic to you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Hi, my name's Melinda Marsh, and I'm with LH1 Collective. And when you're talking about the boards that you've created or that you walked into that were already in creation and that you helped to evolve, you mentioned the auxiliary boards being critical to the input of your organization and its mission. I'm wondering, would the chair of those auxiliary boards have a seat on your board of directors? And if they do the terms and parameters of the board membership differ for those auxiliary chairs than for other members of your board of directors?
Yeah, I probably the best example of that. So as I mentioned, our board members, you can go up to three-year terms, basically 9 years as a standard board member. If you come up though, say you become the head of this young adult group, that's just a one-time, like 3-year, and you can probably renew. That's not written in the bylaws very specifically, but we will always have, hopefully we're getting new blood that will lead those different sort of subgroups. And when I say subgroups, it's communities within our bigger communities. So we're grandparents, National Leadership Council, and teens and young adults. So So it is written a little differently for them, just because those positions change more frequently. So, you know, but it's funny because, and if you're at this stage too, you know, it was a great exercise when we sat down and redid our bylaws. And it's, you know, especially if we have groups here that are, you know, 10, 15 years old, it's definitely an exercise worth sitting down and doing, and if you haven't done it, just to make sure it's still fresh to how your organization should run now. We had a question right up front here, this gentleman.
Hello, Wes Rogers with Sertra Syndrome. You spoke about your strategy for your board and the diversity of different skill sets and experiences. Could you speak to any strategy you had for diversity of your scientific advisory board, and then how that board has impacted strategy, or when you bring them in for strategy?
Can I speak?
Yeah,
so.
please.
We are a disease-inclusive organization. We represent the more than 10,000 rare diseases. As an organization, it's a monumental task to develop a scientific advisory council. You can't go out and find 12 people that are experts in 10,000 different rare diseases and ask them to sit on your board. Our approach to this for the scientific advisory council was to find researchers, scientists, clinicians within the rare disease community that come from different backgrounds. So we have somebody that has come from the NIH, we have somebody that's come from academia, we have somebody that is a clinician, a practicing clinician, we have a surgeon, we have who is also a parent. We have people that have been funded through the Young Investigator Draft that they themselves were young investigators and early stage scientists that have gone through our program. So for us, the approach was to find people that were involved in the rare disease community but come from different backgrounds, and they can collectively bring their experience and say, hey, well, this is how it works when we're funding a government grant. And that really helped us from the strategic standpoint of developing an RFA that we put out, a request for applications for having people apply for the Young Investigator Draft. How do we take these applications that are coming in and assess what's best for each community? And the approach that we had was really built around collaboration, is that when we have a patient advocacy organization apply for a research grant, they are nominating a researcher within their disease state. That researcher and that disease, that researcher in that project is first assessed by that disease-specific patient advocacy organization's scientific advisory council. Then it comes to ours to say, is this project feasible? Is it? And we understand the impact that it's going to have from the community because it has that first line assessment. But then when it comes to our scientific advisory council, we're having the perspective of somebody in academia saying this is possible, or somebody from the government side saying, well, this is going to require these resources, and there's no way with the amount of money that they're receiving they're going to be able to accomplish this. So we have to kind of push back and say, how is this going to happen with $20,000? So that is the way, is kind of bringing different perspectives in the rare disease community together to sit on the scientific advisory council to have this different understanding of how research can move forward from their unique perspective. So that was our kind of a unique approach to building that out.
And we did it the same way that we did our board, and we're actually just starting to grow our scientific advisory board. So we had 4 for many years, and we just added a 5th this past week that has specialty in gene therapy. And I think now we can start growing it, that we actually have a plan. Because to be honest, as we were, the first 5 years was building our research toolbox, right, and doing basic research that had never been done. And so I think if we had prematurely filled it maybe with someone who was in novel drug discovery, we're not doing that. So that wouldn't necessarily really be helpful. And so now that we know in year 5, okay, the things we're going after is repurposing and gene therapy or gene editing. And so what do we need to fill that board? And so it will be someone in gene therapy, it will be someone that has clinical trial experience, and things like that. So I think, again, being strategic and seeing what you need and how they can push you forward. And I will say that I think part of our failure is, just as an organization for our scientific advisory board, is that we didn't have a scientific plan to move us forward. So when they were voting on grants, they were we're voting just like, is this a great science idea to fund? And by the way, we could all fund science until the end of time and never come up with a treatment. So I think finally now that we do have a roadmap for them to sort of look at and then compare the grants that we're getting, I think they'll be way more strategic and much able to help in many other ways. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Jennifer, ATRX Research Alliance. I want to go back to something that you mentioned, Jen, regarding the Scientific Advisory Board and how you uncovered that they were not necessarily taking that role in helping you build that roadmap. And so the advisors, though they're great and they add a ton of value, they weren't the ones that are really going to help build that plan. So what did you do to create that plan to then have the scientific advisors support you? How did you find that knowledge?
Yeah, so the way that in year 3, it became very clear, but then COVID happened. I also then went to the Ultragenics boot camp if no one's ever been or you have been, I think it's fantastic. It's a whirlwind course, but takes you from A to Z in finding a treatment and a cure. And at that time, I realized we needed someone to come in and assess what we were doing. You know, here I was, you know, with our board and our families building this toolbox. And who was that out there? Who could come and give us that advice? And I was slowly realizing that it's a very small space. There were some people that were consultants that were coming in and building a roadmap. I found them personally a little bit generic, and I thought we need to hire someone. This will be our first full-time hire, will be a science director who will really do a deep dive and create a research roadmap for us. And so that's really how we did it. And I thought maybe we hired 18 months too late, but I think we hired at the perfect time. And by the way, if you're thinking about hiring a science director, don't hire one part-time. This is what I've learned. Advice to me was given full-time, and there is enough work to do it full-time.
That's a good point. One last question.
Just curious your perspective on this, but how do you encourage your board, whether it's scientific side of it or the parent advisory board, to collaborate and engage with corporate and industry partners?
I don't think we've cracked that egg in a very strong, successful way. At least Cure JM. You may have had more corporate.
I think for us, one of the ways that we've tried to crack that egg essentially is trying to, when we have our event, so we have our Young Investigator Draft event, it's an opportunity where we have all of our board members there. We have a lot of our sponsors, the industry partners that we have. And one of the things that we did this year was we gave all of our board members basically a list of who was going to be there and gave them a responsibility to go and meet with the people who support us. And what it was able to do was basically to kind of break down that barrier. At the end of the day, we're all people. It's just people meeting people. Some people work in industry, some people sit on the board, but at the end of the day, it humanized the work that everybody was trying to do and the collective support that they were all there for uplifting athletes. And so it really became an opportunity for them to understand and to meet the individuals in the industry side and say, well, what are you guys trying to get out of this? Why do you guys support uplifting athletes? And vice versa, the industry partners being able to sit there and say, hey, why are you on the board? What brings you to this organization? And I think that connection and that connectivity is really important for us to be able to have that unifying voice and being able to be on the same page as we move forward and try to build the relationships.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap for timing, but I wanted to, if afterwards, if you want to come up and ask anybody about anything, please do. I wanted to point out, I'm not sure if any of you have seen this before, the Milken Institute through Faster Cures is very hard to see, but basically they created this sort of maturity model for organizations. So they kind of model it around a house, first floor, second floor, third floor. This would be an example of the third floor. So it has nice milestones and benchmarks that you might want to find yourself at and kind of see where you're at, actually, and benchmark yourself against other organizations. I see a lot of cameras coming out. here, make it easier for you. I put a link there. And so definitely go there. And they actually have a blank slate one too, a blank house where you can start filling in. So, you know, our organization every year does a retreat with our board, and we do map these things out for where we want to be, and you know, heading down on research, where we want to be on organizationally. How do we want to, you know, do fundraising so we have diverse sources. So anyways, there are lots of tools out there. This is one of them, and I highly recommend it. That's it.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's give him a hand.